I'd like to commemorate the government team on making an excellent first speech. I want to start off with a little bit of an exercise. I'd like to receive knocks if you in this room prefer the classical music genre. I'd like to hear knocks if you prefer an alternative rock genre. I'd like to hear knocks if you prefer an alternative folk genre. How about pop? Maybe you just listen to soundtracks. Maybe you listen to classic rock. Knock if you listen to Paul McCartney on your iPod. And I quote, Paul McCartney is dead in every sense of the word, unquote. Here's the premise of the opposition. As we've just seen in this simple exercise that we've participated and engaged the entire room, we see that Paul McCartney is not dead in every sense of the word. We want to provide a few burdens that we believe that the opposition or the government, as defining this resolution as a metaphor, must uphold in today's round. As we see, Sir Paul McCartney is dead. If it is going to be interpreted as a metaphor, we must look at the concept of death. Let's look at these metaphors real quick. Starting off with the first, he's not coming back. He's not coming back. We can agree that unless somebody is Jesus and has the power of resurrecting, they will not be coming back in the sense of this word. Sir Paul McCartney is dead. So while we're... Yes, sir.
Are you trying to claim that Paul McCartney was not a Christian and thus going to hell?
No. Okay, so the issue of being born again and having a life in heaven is an entirely different issue. Your soul's living for eternity is an entirely different issue. But when we talk about Paul McCartney, Sir Paul McCartney, as in Sir as he was dubbed on earth, when we talk about Paul McCartney living on earth in the physical sense, he's not coming back. That burden must be met. Secondly, the presence must be gone completely. Presence must be gone completely. And there's two subpoints here. A, physical, and B, legacy. A, physical, B, legacy. Talk about physical real quick. His presence must be gone physically, as in Paul McCartney and the principles that he promoted, the style of music, the goal of music, conveying messages through percussion, through rhythm, through his styles, his philosophy, must be physically gone and not manifested in any musical genres that we see today. It must not remain on anyone's iPods or Spotify accounts or iTunes accounts, because that would be a physical presence of Paul McCartney and his music and Paul McCartney and what he stood for. And then the legacy. The legacy must die. As it is commonly said, heroes get remembered, but legends never die. Yes?
Do real-life humans leave behind no legacy even though they are physically dead?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
When an individual dies, is it always true that they leave no legacy even after their physical body has perished?
There's a difference between an ordinary human who dies and leaves a legacy for maybe his family, and somebody who's considered a legend by society and leaves a huge legacy for the society as a whole. And I think we could agree that Paul McCartney was a legend. Yes, sir.
So are you saying that if I have a child and then die, but then 20 generations down the road, they don't remember who I am, but I have children living, am I dead because they don't have a legacy and they don't know who I am?
Well, yeah, you're kind of dead. You died 20 years ago. Sorry for the loss. He must be remembered. Legends never die. So as we're going to see through this case, we're going to disprove these burdens, and then finally the third burden must be that they must provide a cause of death, a reason that they believe Paul McCartney died, or the metaphor of Paul McCartney. They must essentially provide us an autopsy report. These are the burdens of the government team, and I won't be taking your question right now. I need to get into refutation here. So let's start off with this notion of popularity. They believe that he's died in two senses, popularity and publication. So first, in response to the popularity, I asked at the beginning of this speech if anybody in this room listens to Paul McCartney. We got quite a few knocks, meaning that Paul McCartney still possesses some amount of popularity, considering in a very, very small sample size, as in roughly 60 people out of 330 million people in the United States, listening to a band from the United Kingdom, if I do remember correctly, is listening to Paul McCartney today. So I think it's safe to say that there's a certain element of popularity when we talk about Paul McCartney and whether or not he is dead. Secondly, publication. If Paul McCartney's music is still released and still available for purchase on iTunes, I think it's safe to say that Paul McCartney, in the sense of publication, is not dead. Moving on to the first contention, which is pragmatism. Here they talked about Paul McCartney's principles and his practices and his philosophies, but they failed to clarify what they really meant by this. So all we have to base this off of is what we see from Paul McCartney's music, what he valued and what he brought forward in his music. And so if we look at that, let's look at the legacy he's left. Let's look at how his music lives on. The band One Direction was significantly influenced by the Beatles, as my partner, Ty Humphrey, has so aptly pointed out. One Direction is a smash hit, smash success in the United Kingdom right now. They're basically the 2014 equivalent of the Beatles. I think it's safe to say that the legacy that the Beatles left has not died whatsoever. Whether you like One Direction or not, One Direction is a very successful band, and they make very good music that people actually listen to, that is popular and is published. So according to the standards that the government has provided, the Beatles are not dead in that sense. Next, Linkin Park. I think there's probably some Linkin Park fans in this room, and I'll take your question in a second. Linkin Park has been significantly influenced by the practices and the philosophies of the Beatles. Also, Green Day. There's probably some Green Day fans in this room. Influenced by the practices and the philosophies of the Beatles. Red Hot Chili Peppers. Can I get a knock for that? Michael Jackson. Also, very significantly influenced by the Beatles. And the Beatles, yes, were influenced by Elvis Presley. The legacy lives on. It's not safe to say, though, that Sir Paul McCartney and the influence that he made specifically is dead. As we see, it lives on. Bands like Fall Out Boy and even every single other band alive has been influenced in some way by the legend of Paul McCartney. Yes, sir.
You likened the band One Direction to the band The Beatles. Is it your contention then to propose the heresy that One Direction is anywhere near as good as the Beatles?
I honestly don't see how that enthymeme logically follows, because if we break that down, the missing premise there is that if somebody is to leave a legacy and influence somebody in any way at all, they must then therefore be just as good and be equal in quality and quantity. And we can't agree on that premise. So this enthymeme is flawed because the assumed premise between the audiences is not agreed upon. So for these reasons, I cast a vote for the opposition.